second to shoot. Fires at the top of the key and takes it home. The Liberty take a 2-point lead.
Welcome to Liberty FM, the podcast dedicated to all things New York Liberty. I'm Felicia, and I'm joined by my co-host and husband, Francois. This is episode 20, recapping game 1 of the semifinal between the New York Liberty and Connecticut Sun. Let's get into this game, which did not produce the result the Liberty wanted. Francois, what do we think about this start to the semifinals?
I mean, that was a very, very disappointing start for the New York Liberty. Probably the worst game of the season at the worst of time. It felt like, I don't know, we were deflated or something at the end of the game. Like, I don't know, there was no passion from the team. There was like, I don't know, they were gassed. Like, maybe too much energy was spent on that first round series. But, yeah, Connecticut came with a plan. And, Stephanie Weiss, who's, been, rewarded with Coach of the Year, she came with a great plan, and she said that she was really proud of her group. She felt like, they came in and played the most consistent 40 minutes they play all year, particularly on the defensive end, and it showed. And, it's not necessarily an upset, but definitely an upset in the way they took that game in New York.
Yeah, I think, you definitely felt like the Liberty, I don't know that they were necessarily gassed. I mean, they definitely had some days in between their game against the Mystics, but I do think they got caught on the back foot, and Connecticut was ready. You can't, like we said in the previous podcast, although the Liberty had beaten Connecticut throughout the season, this is different. It's playoff basketball. They're going to come with a whole new mentality, a different mindset. Everyone does once it's playoff basketball, and it's tough. And, I just think for the Liberty, the playmakers they've had, in previous games just didn't show up today. They just had a tough time dealing with the defense, the switches, the screens that would be set. And unfortunately, I would say in this one where Betnijah Laney would, still do her thing on defense, the offensive points weren't there for her and for Breanna Stewart, which I think just didn't help the Liberty. And Breanna Stewart not really starting the game that well points-wise. She obviously got blocks and assists and things of that nature, but they really needed points, and they just weren't getting that. The shots just weren't falling today.
Yeah, before we look into more details as to what went wrong with the Liberty, like individually, there is a player that we have to mention, and she was probably our favorite player on the team for the past few seasons. And if you were at the Barclays and if she made a shot, the DJ would play Becky with the good hair. Becca Allen. Wow, what an incredible game from her back, in her former home. And, the last time we talked about her was that matchup, that infamous matchup in Connecticut in the regular season when the Liberty came back from 20 points down, and during crucial times, it was Becca Allen that kind of helped the Liberty coming back into that game, missing free throws, fouling Sabrina. But she came back with a vengeance. And you knew, like, even when they filmed her, when she entered the Barclays, the way she was dressed, like, she was just to, like,
on a mission.
I'm in business today. And she did, like, not only defensively, she had a lot of skills. She obviously has a long wingspan and a very underrated defender. But offensively, everything was clicking, scoring threes, especially at the start of the first quarter to set the tone for Connecticut, cutting to the basket, like providing everything that the Connecticut Sun needed in that game. And that kind of set the tone for the Sun. And then once, Becca was a little, quieter, who came to sort of, take over? DeWanna Bonner. And Sandy Brondello should know. I mean, she coached her for many, many years with the Phoenix Mercury, and they won a title together. But at 36 years old, she's probably having one of the best seasons of her career after, 16 or 17 years in the league. That is so impressive. And I always feel like if you manage to stop DeWanna Bonner, you created, like, a huge advantage for yourself. But if she gets going, you could be there for a rough afternoon, and that was the case this afternoon. She could not be stopped.
Yeah, I mean, she can pull up from just about anywhere on the court, and she was just red hot, especially as the game wore on. You know, I think the Connecticut Sun just built up their intensity through the first half and then especially into the second half, and DeWanna Bonner pretty much finished it off for them coming into the fourth quarter. So, you know, between her being the top scorer for Connecticut and Rebecca Allen being the second best scorer, it was just a tough day for the Liberty. And, you know, I think they definitely can come out better next game, but right now they got punched in the mouth this game.
Yeah, so my question for you, Felicia, like, what did you make of the Liberty's defense? Because as much as the offense is great and obviously they have a lot of talent, anybody could score, like, we kind of forget that it's through their defense that they win those games and that they've been brilliant this season. When they managed to beat a few times the Las Vegas Aces, it was through their defense. When they managed to, you know, come back against the Washington Mystics in Game 2 of the first round, it was through their defense. And I gotta say, like, today, as we're recording after the game, their defense was very disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, defense is going to win you games. There's no question. The defense will help your offense get going. And if your defense is not on lock, your offense is going to be shaky as well. And you could see just who they were picking on. You know, unfortunately, in this game, I would have to say they picked on Breanna quite a few times. They got by Betnijah a couple of times, but I think they picked on Breanna the most, I would say, in this game. And, you know, Breanna is not the aggressive defender. You know, she's not going to have the wingspan to take on Rebecca Allen and others. And so it's just tough to see some of those plays where if you get by her, she's not really going to be as aggressive as she could be to try to get the basket or, you know, or even possibly get a foul. Just try to stop you from getting the bucket. You know, you saw quite a few players get by her, and then she just kind of stopped a little bit or slowed down. Once you got by her, you pretty much got to the bucket, got to the hole. So that's tough. I also think that this was just not Betnijah's game. Yeah. You know, it was a tough one for her as well. I think she only had 3 points in this game, and typically, you know, we just saw a stat yesterday that I think it's at least 4 of their starters that they all are averaging for the playoffs about 18 points per game, and she only had 3 today. So you needed her as much as you needed her defense, you needed her offense, and neither showed up today. And so, you know, it's just a tough one. I think, you know, for the guards, it was especially tough for them. And I also think for this game, it was hard to try to even feed JJ. You know, you would get some points off of feeding her, but Connecticut adjusted and they were quick to double teaming, whether it was her, whether it was Stewie. They were quick to attack certain people. And so, you know, it was just tough all around.
Yeah, I mean, Connecticut had a game plan. I felt like on offense, they knew how to pick the Liberty apart every single time. So, you know, they used the pick and roll quite a lot. And if you were going under the screen, then Bonner would punish you on that with the free. And then if you try to double team the guard or whoever had the ball, then you have, you know, the person that set the screen and quite often it will be Alyssa Thomas that, you know, will get the ball on the inside. And then they would also have screens. So they would set a screen, you know, by the 3-point line or by the free throw line. And that will allow someone to cut to the basket. And, you know, they do the pick and roll and then they see someone cutting. And, you know, when we rewatch some of the highlights after the game, you know, just to, you know, review certain plays, like the miscommunication on defense, like
there was a lot of miscommunication.
You know, defenders not really knowing where to be or who to guard. Like, at this level, like, you cannot have that.
Or just leaving your assignment.
Yeah, you cannot have that at this level in the playoff game. Like, you could get by if it's a regular season game, but in the playoffs, especially with a team like Connecticut, you're going to get punished right away. And what was very, significant was in the second half, there was, the Connecticut were attacking on our side of the Barclays where we were standing. And at some point, Alyssa Thomas got the ball. And she was literally, like, just waving people, like, giving directions, like, and she knew exactly how to pick apart the Liberty defense. And, it turned out like, a couple of times she just passed the ball for someone who was cutting, or sometimes she would just do pick and roll, then get the ball at the post, and then just like, scoring an easy basket. So it was very frustrating. And then, like you said, JJ, like in the first quarter, I think she had some like 8 points, fitting her on the inside, which has been the bread and butter of the Liberty when they faced the Connecticut Sun in the regular season. Like, every time JJ just dominated the Connecticut Sun, and she did the same thing in the first quarter, but they adapted though. They adapted and the Liberty only scored 2 points in the paint in the second half. And when they mentioned that stats to Sandy, you saw her eyes wide open, like almost like in disbelief that it happened. But that's the thing. Connecticut adjusted, and the Liberty had no answer for that.
Yeah, again, you got to remember defense is going to win games. And also defense will jumpstart your offense. If you can get stops, turnovers, things of that nature. When the Liberty play with pace, they got to play with pace. When they are stagnant and there's not a lot of ball movement, you're not going to get a whole lot. You might get a shot here or there, but when they play with pace is when they will do well, and when their defense is clicking. You could tell there was definitely a lot of miscommunication between the players on assignments and switches, and you could just tell it just wasn't their night. And so, they just got to look at the tape and figure out where they got to make all the necessary adjustments for game 2. Because this is just, I would say this is one of their worst games of the season. And I do think they can come back in game 2 and be the team that we know them to be. And, also, I would like to just give props to just some of the bench players. I
was going to tell you about this. What actually worked for the Liberty.
What worked this time around, with Kayla Thornton and Johannès coming in, they were able to get stops. I was saying it during the game that when they were in there, they played better defensively. Even if they were in a hole, they were able to get a couple of stops. They were able to get some shots. Kayla got 6 points. She got a couple threes. Yeah. Marine had, a few shots herself. She would have had a spectacular reel of a 3-point shot, but it didn't go in. So that was it was just a good. You could just see that. I just feel like those two players, they got to get more minutes, especially when, people like Betnijah or Sab, it's just not their game today.
Yeah, I mean, we knew that Marine was going to play more minutes against Connecticut compared to the Mystics, because she has been pretty good against Connecticut all throughout the season. And to be fair, she is a much better defender than people want to believe. I've definitely seen the growth all throughout the season. Yeah. Because I feel like Sandy has, demanded from her, a little bit more defense, at the guard position. And, she was holding her own today. And when her and KT got on the court, it completely shifted the momentum for the Liberty, because unfortunately Sabrina and Betnijah, to, my surprise, were kind of struggling. And then by the time that Sabrina came back in the last few minutes of the second quarter, she started going in as well at the 3-point line. And next thing you knew, the Liberty took the lead at halftime by, leading by 4. Breanna Stewart's free. And Breanna Stewart had a crazy shot, to end the second quarter. So you felt like, okay, they made the adjustments. We know who's going to be reliable today. And, I was like, okay, we're good for the second half. So let's move on from that first half and, things will get going. But once again, we mentioned that in the previous podcast. We mentioned how, and it might be very insignificant, but it happens all the time though. The away team usually comes back on the court about 7 to 8 minutes before the start of the third quarter. And the Liberty, sometimes it's like 3 or 4 minutes, but the last few games, and today's included, they came back with about 2 minutes left. And whether you like it or not, whether it's insignificant or not, those past few games, the third quarter has been terrible.
They've started real lethargic in these third quarters when they come out with under 3 minutes in the in the halftime left. And you don't think it, you wonder if they get to warm up. Does it really affect the game? But it's interesting because watching them come out with just a minute to warm up, and they kind of shoot around and they got to get back to the bench. They just start real lethargic. Yeah. Both games against the Mystics and then now against the Sun. It's just they get slapped in the mouth again and then they get into a hole and then they got to climb out of the hole. And, I don't know if coming back during the half, you need to be on that court. Yeah. The bench players are out kind of before the starters are. Yeah. And some of those bench players aren't even, playing in the game. And so I don't know if it's going to be a huge help for them, but every little bit helps, I think, in getting your team gelling and just trying to get, back on the court, get your head back into the game and really focus and keep composure.
Yeah, and so we started with Idemann's free in the corner to start the third quarter, and then it just basket after basket, the Liberty's lack of ball movement on offense, and next thing you know, they created a difference in the third quarter, and you look at the number of points, 28 to 15 in the third quarter. Yeah. I think they started 14-2.
16-2.
16-2?
Yeah, it was a 9-0 run before the Liberty scored, and then that was it.
Conceding 28 points in the third quarter, that's not acceptable. And, at some point after the game, they did mention the lack of ball movements. Breanna Stewart said they had the ability to get to the second or third side, and we just didn't do that. When they always say, if we play, Liberty basketball, which is ball movement, everybody's involved, it makes it hard for the defense and you don't know where the opponent is going to come from. But if you're very static or just waiting on, Stewie or JJ to bail you out, or maybe Sabrina Free, the defense is going to adapt. This team lost 4 times against the Liberty in the regular season. So they know now what to do to try to disrupt them. And I think what they said after the game, that their primary focus was to disrupt their three-pointers. Because the Liberty were the best team in the league when it comes to three-pointers. But when you look at the stat for this game,
it was just under 30%.
It was just not good enough. And 8 for 27. They were already, had a bad 3-point percentage the last game against the Washington Mystics. And so, you got to give props to the Connecticut Sun defense because they put a lot of pressure on the guards. They didn't give much room to Sabrina. She had a couple of threes, but, overall, I think they got her where they wanted to. And then the shots were not going in. Breanna Stewart as well. And talking about Breanna Stewart, I don't know if we have to be worried or not, but if we look at the last 2 weeks of the regular season and also the playoff, and there was a very interesting stats by Richard Cohen on Twitter that said that Breanna Stewart is now 18 for 59 from the field in the playoffs, so she's about 30%. They managed to get past the Mystics despite the poor shooting percentage, But, it's going to be a struggle against Connecticut if she can't get at least a little more efficient. And she's 1 for 15 from free during those playoffs, which is not helping. So, we've been accustomed to monsters performances from Stewie all throughout the season. But I also enjoy the fact that the Liberty, slowly but surely in the last part of the season, showed that they didn't necessarily have to rely on Stewie all the time, and they could score many different ways. But in the playoffs, you're gonna need your star players.
Yeah.
And if she shoots at this level, it's gonna be tough.
You're not gonna get to the next level, and you're not winning a championship without Breanna Stewart. You're just not. It doesn't matter. They've managed to win games even if she's not, scoring 20, 30 points because everyone else has contributed. But when everyone else has an off night, especially for today, Laney and Ionescu both really had off nights. You needed Stewie, but Stewie needed to score a lot more points than she did. And I have noticed that, her percentages have been going down in the last few weeks, but they've managed because they've had contributions from everyone else. So it's helped the Liberty to continue this run until today. And, I don't know. I just think, I don't know if it's just the season, now you're playing, you play 40 games, and are they tired? Are they fatigued? Maybe they're a little fatigued. Maybe she's just more fatigued than she thought, and the shots just aren't going down because she gets looks. It's just the trajectory of her shot sometimes is a little off. And so, I don't know. That could be fatigue setting in, as the playoffs, keep going. And you're just going to need others to step up. And I think, for the Liberty, where teams are going to pick them apart is at the 3-point line. Your main sniper from the 3-point line is Sabrina. We know, even watching last year, if you can double team Sabrina at the top of the key, if you can get to her, the likelihood is that she's not gonna score. She will probably turn the ball over because that's everyone's defensive ploy is to, if you can double team her, the likelihood is that you're gonna get the ball back. And to me, I've been saying this throughout the season, is that they need some mid-range shots. That's the one thing that the Liberty, the only person really that's really good at it is Stewie. But if her shots aren't going down, you have Betnijah at times that she can do it as well. But that's sort of it.
Yeah, but I feel like, Sandy has to, put her players in the best position to succeed. I don't know if she said it during the post-game conference, but, she knows that she's going to have to do better because, you see how Alyssa Thomas was putting a lot of pressure on Breanna Stewart. And, sometimes she was double team, triple team, and as great as she is, it's going to be hard. But there was a tweet that I saw, and it was very interesting. Like, Natasha Cloud was, tweeting live during the game, and obviously she's a great, basketball mind, so she always has a lot of good takes. And she was saying that they gotta get Stewie more isolated touches on the block against Rebecca Allen. It allows her to get confident early, see some go in, so while also potential to out. Connecticut best defender in foul trouble. And so when they were switching and you had Rebecca Allen defending on Breanna Stewart at the post, it was almost automatic for Stewie to score. Like when she gets the ball at the post and she has that little fadeaway, it's almost impossible to stop her or block her. So if you see that, because she also had some open shots and open threes as well, kudos to the defense, but not all the time it was due to Connecticut's defense. It was sometimes just missed shot. Like, they were a little flat today. So if you see that very early on, that it's just not going to be Stewie's night at the 3-point line, then get her closer to the basket. Get her those mid-range shots. Get her to have the favorable matchup so that you can, take advantage of it. Connecticut did, they had the preferential matchups almost every time, so then why don't you do it? And I guess that's going to be the key for them on Tuesday to sort of review the tape and and make sure they make the adjustment for that game.
And it can't just be Stewie, though. Obviously, we know Stewie is an excellent player. She's going to come back and do her thing. But, you know, if the three-point line is shut down, you got to get to the basket. You can't just sit at the three-point line hoping for someone to get open from three. If it's not happening, you got to drive. Like, you got to drive to the basket. And unfortunately, I would say outside of Stewie and at times even JJ, we've seen her do it as well. And Betnijah, I think those are your top three who can, you know, really fight and get to the basket. I think for Breanna, there's still a learning curve there for her because sometimes she definitely gets blocked on some of her shots, you know, when she's going to the basket. But also Connecticut has the height, so it's going to make it a bit more difficult. And so you're going to have to, especially for someone like, say, you know, Courtney Vandersloot or Sabrina Ionescu, who are not as tall as some of these Connecticut defenders that they have on them, you got to figure out other ways to get to the hoop. And if it's not going to be the three, you're going to have to drive and hope that you can create space and get a mid-range shot. I think I've been saying it all season that I just need Breanna. If Breanna can get a good mid-range shot going through games, it will open up for her. And when we saw it happening, it opened up for her. She just wasn't a three-point threat. It was like, okay, she can take this to the basket as well. And yeah, they went away from that today, though, and some of her shots were a bit too predictable against people like Allen, who could just swat it away. So, you know, they just got to do better next game, and I think they will. Yeah,
I mean, next game is on Tuesday. We ended up losing that game by 15, scoring 63 points, which was probably the lowest scoring game for the Liberty all season long. Someone even mentioned on Twitter that I never thought that the Miami Dolphins will score more points than the New York Liberty today, because they went on a rampage with 70 points against the Denver Broncos. But that's another game, another sport. But it's just to show you how little the Liberty scored. And so yeah, it's gonna be an interesting game. I mean, Sandy said it's almost like a elimination game, even though it's technically not. But if you're down 2-0, losing your 2 home games, and you have to go to Connecticut to get 2 wins, good luck with that. I mean, they could definitely get one, but the momentum would not be in your favor, and the confidence would be really high for Connecticut. So it's almost like a win or go home type of mentality game that they're going to need to have on Tuesday. So we'll see about that. But in other news, before we conclude, I had to mention the fact that some awards were given this past week. And so, unfortunately, for us as Liberty fans, Betnijah Laney didn't get the Defensive Player of the Year. She had 1 vote, which is crazy when you think about it. Yeah, if I show you you didn't know? I'll show you
That's disrespectful.
The breakdown of the votes. So A'ja Wilson had 32 votes. So A'ja Wilson was for the second year in a row Defensive Player of the Year. Nothing shocking with that, but she got 32 votes. Alyssa Thomas was second with 24 votes. Brittany Sykes was third with 3 votes, and Betnijah Laney was fourth with 1 vote. And then when it came to all defensive, first team and second team, it's kind of different. Even though you might have had more votes for the individual award, you might end up on the second team. Mm-hmm. So the first team was A'ja Wilson, Alyssa Thomas, Brittany Sykes, Breanna Stewart, and Jordan Canada. And then the second team, Betnijah Laney was on the second team with Ezi Magabor, Nika Agumake, Nafisa Collier, and Elizabeth Williams from the Chicago Sky. And I think that there has to be a question in terms of the voting. There was even Courtney Williams from the Chicago Sky that was almost like pleading for, the players and the coaches to, vote for those awards, or at least have a word in that, which is valid because obviously the players face, all the other players, so they know, how tough it is to score on someone. But then you could also argue that there could be a certain level of, of bias if you voting for your own teammates. But there were a lot of guards that were really questioning, what does it take for them to have more respect, in terms of voting? Because if you look at the history of the votes, it's been dominated by centers, and it's the same in the NBA. We had Marcus Smart the past year that, had, Defensive Player of the Year, and it was the first guard since Gary Payton in the mid-90s to get the award. So it seems very hard for guards, to be voted as the best defender. And I feel like, it's not all about the stats, though. Obviously, Asia is the best blocker of the league. She takes a lot of rebounds. Stewie also had 1.5 steals and, almost the same amount of blocks. But for us who have watched all the games of the Liberty, for the past few seasons, and particularly this season, how Betnijah was so impactful, guarding the best, guards of the other team. And you not necessarily going to see that in the stats, but you see it in the impact, how she ties, the person who has the ball, and how it helps. I mean, even Stewie said that, it means a lot for her to see Betnijah being recognized in the all-defensive team. She said that she thinks that it's really seeing what she's done this season and how she can continue to impact this league going forward. It's something that she cannot wait to be a part of, and she knows that. It was Miles Ehrlich that got to interview Stewie, and she said that, she, is so happy. She really enjoyed playing with Betnijah because it allows her to have more freedom and to do things on defense that she wouldn't necessarily be able to do if, she didn't have a teammate like Betnijah. So even Stewie says that thanks to having Betnijah on the team, that helps her to do more stuff on defense. So she get first team, Betnijah to get second team, but Stewie tells you, it's thanks to Betnijah that I was able to accomplish those things defensively.
Yeah, but most people don't watch all the games. That's why I think you made a good point about just even Courtney Williams saying, the players should get a say in these votes as well. Because they know, based on all the games they play against each other, who's the toughest person out there defensively. They talk. They know who that is. And it can't just be stats, because defense sometimes it's not always going to show up in the stats. And so, outside of blocks and steals and in the rebounds, there's so much more to defense. And I think you're right. Yes, the Defensive Player of the Year going to Asia, we knew it was well deserved. There's no complaint that Asia deserved to be Defensive Player, but I do think Betnijah should have got more votes than what she got. I think that's disrespectful, but that's just me. But yeah, I do think if you gave the players a chance to also chime in and even cast their own vote along with, everyone else, that, the outcome might be a little bit different. It may have still been Asia, but I think you would have seen other players come up into that list.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. And, we just finished watching the first game between the Las Vegas Aces and the Dallas Wings. And Asia Wilson was once again dominant on both ends of the floor. I mean, she had 3 blocks in the first half. And, she is the anchor of the Aces. So it's not really shocking, but it definitely feels like guards should get a little more respect and recognition for what they're doing. I mean, I remember Natasha Cloud, after the elimination game against the New York Liberty, she said, I'm an all-defensive guard. I belong in this league, and I'm one of the best defenders out there. And you see that she wasn't even on the 2 best defensive team, and she mentioned that frustration on Twitter.
And she has every right, because when you see her play defense, her name, she should be in the conversation. She should be even second team. Like, she should be there because she is a bull on defense, as we saw, you know, in the previous games with her. Yeah, I think, you know, sometimes, you know, outside of people like Asia and Stewie, and you've seen what they've done all year, you know, sometimes a lot of these votes is, you know, might be stat related, might be who you favor popularity wise and things like that. But, you know, I think if you do get players' opinions and even players to vote on certain things, you'll see other players come up into those accolades.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at, for example, the All-Star Game votings, it's a mixture of, you know, media, fans, coaches, and players, I think. So, and you see a disparity even in the voting between the players and the media. So there is definitely something out there. And there was some media that was saying that if they were able to, you know, be, you know, paid full time for what they're doing, then I guess they'll be able to cover a little bit better the league. Because you see that sometimes, like, you know, for example, when the New York Liberty play away, that not all the reporters that normally follow the Liberty are at those games, you know, because maybe they have another job that they have to do and they cannot cover the Liberty beyond, you know, just New York. So if you were able to, you know, be at the stadium instead of just relying on, you know, watching the game on TV, then you will see things that we see when we go to the Liberty games and what we see from Betnijah, Laney that, you know, maybe some people wouldn't see if they watch on TV or just watch a couple of Liberty games. So it's going to be something that they're going to have to figure out. I mean, obviously this league is continuing to grow. But, you know, having that conversation and hopefully that will lead to positive changes will help the league to continue to grow. But I know that, you know, the next awards are going to be also controversial. I'm sure that, you know, the MVP, which is going to be, I think, the last trophy, is going to create some tension and disappointment or whatever. But yeah, it is what it is. At least we could, you know, the only positive out of this is that because there's so much talent, now it's becoming really, really complicated to figure out who's getting awards, right?
Yeah, the three players who are up for this particular award for MVP, it's well deserved for all three. So yeah, we would want Stewie to win, but I'll be sad, but I'm not going to be shocked if Asia or even Alyssa Thomas gets it. I wouldn't be shocked if one of them got it. They all had great seasons. Yeah. And so, you know, and they were the anchors. They are the anchors of their teams. And so either way, I think as the league grows, you're going to get, I mean, in the years to come, there are a lot of great players that are about to step on the court in the WNBA. As you can look at some of these college athletes that are coming up. Yeah. The WNBA is going to continue to grow. The viewership, the attendance, all of that will grow, which will only help, you know, overall coverage of the WNBA. You know, the NBA was in this spot many, many years ago. And so the WNBA just needs to get that bump up. And I think they're getting there. And hopefully as people invest and as percentages continue to go up, we're going to see things change and we'll see things evolve as time goes on. Yeah. So on Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to need MVP performance from Stewie, and we're going to need all defensive performance from Betnijah to be able to get that win. We will record the podcast the following day. But thank you so much once again for listening to us. And as we always say, Felicia, let's go Liberty!